welcome back. This is the Northern Miner Podcast, brought to you this week by the Yukon Mining Alliance. Please do check out what's going on in the Yukon. It is exciting. I'm your host, Matthew Keeble, sitting beside my co-host,
Lesley Stokes.
And thanks again for coming along for the ride. This will be our episode for the week of, I want to say the 26th, September 26th. It only took me a second to get that this time. So we're rolling along this week. There was some big news out of the U.S. Federal Market Committee on interest rates that sort of drove gold up. Everybody probably saw it.
Yeah.
There was also a few things about met coal that we'll get into again. We talked about it last week. It actually hit a sort of a ceiling as well on some rumors that some met coal holders were looking to offload supply, so it might taper off a little bit. And we have some new stuff coming along. I'm going to do a little bit of a side sort of a little episode or snippet on what we're going to be doing with the podcast, because we're going to be not necessarily changing a lot of things, but sort of reformatting. And because we had a lot of really positive feedback from listeners, which we thank you for, on the Joe Mazumder interviews, Mickey Fulp, and some requests for more of that sort of content. So what we're looking to line up now is sort of some regular guest components that we can bring in maybe once a month. And the exciting part is Lesley's getting her own segment, right? The Geology Corner.
Yes, the Geology Corner, everybody.
We are going to have a reoccurring weekly segment.
Can you imagine?
And so this was the brainchild of a recent conference call. And what it's going to be is Lesley's going to dig into, some press releases, some drill holes, and some deposit types, and sort of help everyone along understanding the mining community, geology, press releases, and sort of, especially for people who are sort of newer to the business. And
like, you know, sometimes like little red flags that you can see in the geology that's not really spoken too much about, but it's important in terms of the larger picture as well. So I'll touch on those things. Exactly.
And so we're not gonna pigeonhole it too much. It's sort of a broad segment that'll touch on regional geology, trends, why people are drilling where they are, what the drill holes look like. And also if somebody's, if a press release looks a little bit wonky, we can maybe comment on it.
Send us a question. If you're confused, if you're like, what is this all about? Then, get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter at Northern Geo, or send me an email, lstokes@northernminer.com, and I'll be happy to look into it for you.
Yes, we are taking, we will definitely take some listener input on the Geology Corner. So if you do have a question about a drill hole, a project, a region, or anything like that, please do send it along to Lesley, and we'll try to work it in for sure. We're actually going to launch that this week, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. For now, I just want to touch on commodities a little bit, because there's been some movement. We saw, it's so funny, markets are so manic right now that it's like there's everyone's waiting for this federal market meeting September 21st, which was yesterday or 2 days ago. But it was a 2-day meeting, so whatever. Anyway, the minutia, whatever. It happened. And so everyone was really waiting for this. Things were in a holding pattern. And the Fed came out and decided 7-3 not to raise rates in September. And so, but they said that, there's definitely going to be one by the end of the year. I can't believe I'm still talking about this. We're 30 episodes into the podcast, and this has not changed. So gold jumped again. We were down around, I believe, sub 1320 through early September. After this happened, it went up, almost hit 1350, which is, we've always talked about this, is sort of the roof. Every time it gets towards 1350, it's just So today we're at 1341 an ounce, $1,341. Silver hasn't changed, $19, just under 20, 1996. Copper's been doing well though. 220 almost. So we've seen a bump up in copper. Same in oil. Oil's up about $2, I think, today to 46.14. So just for a little bit of insight on, I have a funny one, and we were talking about this before we went on air. And I got this really funny, I shouldn't say it's funny. It's actually really interesting, because we were mentioning it, and I was just kind of laughing, because I was like, I never would have really thought about the connection. But so I got an analyst know this from Scotiabank, and they were talking about the U.S. economy, because obviously that's really weighted towards whether they're going to raise interest rates, what's going to happen with gold. And so I got this note, and it was like, FedEx and it was like, I'm like, why is this in a commodity note? And it's like FedEx beat sends positive signal on U.S. economy. So this is something I actually, I didn't know or had never really paid attention to, is that FedEx, like as in the shipping company, is like a really good bellwether for the U.S. economy.
Crazy.
Which is kind of nuts, right? Because you hear a lot of people talk about how, well, they've been adding jobs, but the real wage hasn't gone up, so it's kind of a sign that the economy is a bit tepid. But apparently, according to this, like analysts watch FedEx. So FedEx had a great quarter. And yes, we were talking about FedEx on a mining podcast. Overall, FedEx revenues were up 19%. And the big thing is that there's a surge in U.S. domestic shipping. So I guess everyone's shopping on Amazon or something. I don't know if Amazon has their own shipping service, but they sometimes use FedEx. My girlfriend says I'm an Amazon addict. So it never get on there. It's like, it's deadly. It's like ridiculous. It's significantly cheaper than shopping at like bricks and mortar stores. Like I'm always like, oh, I could buy that there. And then I go to Amazon and I'm like, what the jeez. No wonder they're doing so well. Everything's cheaper. That'll incentivize anybody. So apparently FedEx had a really good quarter. So that means the U.S. economy is potentially stronger than we anticipate. So there may very well be they say the interest rate is coming. So it'll be interesting to watch gold as we move along here. We've seen a bit of a yo-yo in equities. I think Barrick and Goldcorp were up 6 to 7% yesterday following the jump in gold, but they also fell 6 to 7%. So they've just been yo-yoing up and down. Let's launch this thing because I'm so excited. This is I'm gonna put together like a cut-in, like a drop, as they say in radio, for your Geology Corner.
Oh yeah, I asked Matt. I was like, can we put in like sound of volcanoes exploding?
Oh yeah, with like some heavy metal guitar in the back.
Yeah, of course you have to have the heavy metal guitar.
Like some shredding. It's like the guys.
Pun totally intended, people.
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But
volcanoes and heavy metal.
Yeah, so we're gonna watch this right now. So this is our inaugural, the maiden voyage of the Geology Corner.
Yeah.
Lesley has something for us this week. I think it's on West Africa. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we're gonna talk a little bit of West Africa, and so welcome to Lesley's Geology Corner.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous right now.
That's okay.
Because he kind of put this on me like just before we were coming in the studio. He's like, Lesley, you're going to have a Geology Rock Corner. What can you talk about today? I'm like, West Africa?
Yes.
I mean.
Done.
I suppose. No, and the reason why is because I was chatting with Endeavour Mining just the other day, and I was catching up with the folks on the phone. They were all up in London with their new office because they've shut down the office here in Vancouver, and they've just been shuffling around. A lot of changes since La Mancha kind of took that 30% stake last year.
That's right. But they're still listed on the Toronto Exchange. Right?
Yes, they are.
They are, yeah.
So I was chatting with them about their new discovery that they made at the Ity gold mine in Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa. And it was really cool because their big statement is that they've been going through a laundry list of to-dos ever since La Mancha came in, taking that 30% stake. And it seems like their last to-do to scratch off the list is to ramp up exploration at each of their mine sites in West Africa, because they're West African focused, with the intention to expand mine lives to plus 10 years. So they came out with this new results from the Ity discovery, which is called, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right.
That's okay.
But I'm going to try because it sounds really fun. Bakatuo? Maybe?
That sounds good to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the Ity mine is a producing mine. It came from La Mancha during the acquisition. And so they started ramping up exploration around the skirts of it, and they found the Bakatuo, and they've been drilling it off quite a lot over the past year, and they just released it as the announcement. So they were hitting like 9.7 meters of 27 grams gold in these intercepts, and the mineralized zone runs for 800 meters in strike length and 200 meters width. Now, the cool thing is about the Bakatuo and Ity in general is that it happens to be the only, I think, Paleoproterozoic skarn deposit in the Beryminium, I can't pronounce that word, in the Greenstone belt of West Africa. Okay, right?
And so there's not typically skarn formations in Greenstone belts, because is this like an iron formation greenstone similar to what you see in Nunavut, or is it like a little different than the stuff in Canada?
Yeah, this is like yeah, it's kind of similar to the stuff in Canada, I suppose, because you basically have just all these volcanic chains that were smashed together, and then it was like injected with like magma, so you have these big batholiths, and then that was all just amalgamated onto this craton, and then all the gold kind of bubbled up from below and came up through the cracks, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because, Ity and the Bakatuo is the only gold-bearing skarn deposit in West Africa. There are iron skarns elsewhere, but never anything gold-bearing. So I thought that was really interesting. That stood out to me because I'm like, I wonder how many other skarn deposits are there, paleoproterozoic skarn deposits in the in West Africa.
That you don't really associate with West Africa all that much, right?
You just think of orogenic gold deposits, shear hosted. They also have shear hosted stuff there too. But so that's kind of what they're targeting, and they picked up this huge package of land the same time that they announced their discovery, and it's like an 80-kilometer like land package where they're just going to be starting to like slam drill holes into this thing to make new discoveries. Is
it all undercover? Is there outcrop for this skarn, or is it?
It's all pretty much like at surface. But the really weird thing is about Ity and the Bakatuo is it's cool. So it's been eroding away forever. Okay. So it's been weathering. So it's all this like oxide deposit, and because it's all carbonate rocks, like at the contact of these intrusives, all the weathering of the pyrite created acid, which basically eroded away all the carbonate. So it created all these voids that we call karsts. And so the mineralized zones, which were vertically kind of like steeply dipping oriented, contact zones, collapsed into these big holes that created over time. So the geometry changed to the deposit. So that's why you have, where it is that they're mining at Ity, you have these really complex shapes and all the ores concentrated in one zone. But then you have Bakatuo, which is this combination of, you have those dipping layers of mineralization with this completely reworked surface deposits, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of, I can't imagine logging that bloody thing. I'd be like, oh God, which way is this oriented now? Like, what does this mean? So definitely a difference between the oxide portion of any deposit versus the primary part of the deposit.
Now remind me, the orogenic stuff tends to be sort of veiny, right?
Yeah.
So when this skarn stuff, would it be when they're drilling it, like, are the intercepts for the gold wide, or are they more like veins, or is it more disseminated? Like,
I think it's more disseminated. It's not like distinct veins. It's like replacement zones. Okay. And also like stockworks and you name it and stuff. Because there's so much off gassing off of that. Off that intrusive, and it reacts so amazing with this carbonate. It's like this perfect like combination.
Now, do they think do these skarn, would it be classified like a skarn hosted gold thing? Do they have size typically? Like, are they excited about the size? Like you said, they
you look at Ity,
right? They expanded to kind of hopefully encompass what they think might be a system.
Like Ity's one of the longest lived mines there, and in Côte d'Ivoire, and it's produced about a couple million ounces. But everything outside of it has been completely unexplored. Bakatuo, you look at Bakatuo, it's like, seriously, you could throw a stone from the pit onto that bloody thing and no one had found it before. They knew that there was something there, but it just goes to show about the potential of these deposits in West Africa, because there hasn't been a lot of exploration, even just outside these operating pits. It's crazy. It's cool to see Endeavour going and say, we're going to invest so much money into this right now, not just replacing what it is that we're mining. We're going to be thinking big and bigger. And I have no doubt that they're going to get there, I reckon.
Sounds like they need a geology PhD student over there ASAP to...
They probably got heaps.
Start looking at that from a bigger picture angle for sure.
It's super cool. So I expect good things to come out of their exploration programs for sure. And they're actually going to be releasing an exploration strategic review that's coming out in November this year. So keep your eye open for that. They're going to start ranking their projects and coming up with a bit of a timeline on what to expect. But
that is awesome. So
Geology Corner?
You see how well that went?
I don't know. I think I bored everybody.
No. We have interest. We have large scale interest. Trust me.
I suppose.
Wake
up, everyone! Wake up!
Hey, we're back. Hey,
Matt's back. He's going to talk.
Don't worry. The reason I asked you actually about iron formation Jones. I was just on the phone with Guy Gosselin, who is the VPX at Agnico. Right? Yeah, no, I had a really good chat with him.
Hello, and
yeah,
if he's listening.
I know we do have a lot of really faithful listeners who work for Agnico. So hello to Agnico Eagle. We love you guys.
Everyone. I love
but Amaruq is growing at such a ridiculous pace that I had to phone them, and I was like, because like when you talk to them, obviously you're two geologists talking to them. I'm like, can you explain to me why this thing's growing so fast?
Yeah.
Like, because I was like, just in like layman's terms, and he's like, it's it's typical Greenstone. Understand it really well because they've spent so much. Like, one of the things I don't think people really appreciate is that Agnico's been up there for almost 10 years, and they've spent so much time on structural work and mapping, and so they get it. Like they know what's going on up there. And I know a lot of analysts who are like, by the end of the year, that's going to be, Amaruq will be a 5 million ounce deposit.
Sick.
Because this is not coming from Agnico, by the way. So Agnico did not say this, but this is from analyst reports who on their models are assuming that deposit will be 5 million.
No, it's all inferred right now.
It is all inferred, but during the resource update on at the end of the year, they're going to do a year end, which will probably not be till February. But they're going to have another 30,000 meters in there on top of I think it's 70,000 they already drilled, and that they'll have some whale tail into indicated by then, which is the main deposit that they have.
Yes, that's where they started.
And the one little thing I just wanted to touch on, because I did have an interesting talk with them on iron formation greenstones and how well geophysics and electromag work.
Oh,
and how
my
they can
God,
just pick out,
right?
Because the iron just like, it's
yeah,
like everywhere,
right? Big beaming.
And so they can follow the folds and the structures really, like they've got it all worked out really well to like a science. So, but the other thing I want to talk about when we were on Amaruq is one of the things that came out, I think it was in July, was that the Nunavut Impact Review Board decided that Amaruq had to be permitted as a separate project. They were trying to do a permit amendment with Meadowbank. But what happened was that the NIRB, or NIRB, decided that it's going to be permitted as a separate project. And I also had a chance to talk with Dale Coffin, who is corporate director of communication and public affairs at Agnico, and he said they sort of anticipated that they've already got the environmental paperwork sorted out, and they still anticipate being in production at Amaruq by 2019. So,
of course,
not like because everybody talks about the Sabina thing and the Back River, which that's actually going through some interesting re-reviews as well. So we'll touch base on Sabina again. There's some interesting news on there, but I didn't want to just because we were talking about greenstones. It's interesting to bring the Nunavut into it because we also talked about Committee Bay and Orin Resources up there looking for large scale deposits. So it's interesting that those greenstones, and I know some people working down in British Guyana in South America, and there's same thing, running through.
You got to know your game when you're in those belts.
Yeah, like some people work their whole careers on just on like greenstones, so it's interesting. But
it's not like porphyries where you've got like you just drop some holes and it doesn't really change that much from hole to hole.
Yeah.
In these deposits, it can change within 25 meters,
And so I wanted to, because I brought up Colorado and I didn't talk about it. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit. This is an interesting segment. They put out this really big press release and it had an interesting headline where it was, Colorado continues to cut high grade at Inel, which is the project that they've been exploring this summer. One of the projects they've been exploring this summer, because I think they have 2 or 3.
In Northwest BC,
the KSP, the Inel, and they still have North Rock and a few others. So I was sort of taken aback because I was like, well, I kind of read the headline and I'd been working on other things, and then I went and looked at their stock and I was like, what? It's getting kind of punished, and I'm like, I better go read this press release they put out. So Lesley and I always sat down and sort of looked at it more closely, and the issue I guess is that they didn't really hit any bang like holes this summer, I guess, for the meters that they were drilling at Inel, but it sort of leads into some of the sort of works into what we were talking about when we talked about when we discussed the state of the venture and how things have gone up that much, like some companies up 400% over the last 3 or 4 months. And the question is that, what they did there was not bad. They're exploring a relatively greenfield property and they're mapping and doing things like they're doing things, obviously, where if you read the full press release, they're doing their due diligence and identifying targets and working towards making a discovery. But if you don't find something and your valuation is where it is, then there is a lot of downside.
Yeah, that's
and,
true.
And so it's just when you're looking at juniors and stuff is as well, people are excited, right? Like if you go talk to the investment community and stuff, people are looking for good mining projects, and I think there's some generalist investment coming back to looking towards the commodity industry, and it's funny because, man, some of that stuff has just the gains, like we said, we've seen over the last few months have just be careful.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not even that a company's going to do something like they didn't do anything necessarily wrong or anything like that. They just didn't hit like a smoke hole.
Yeah.
During I forget how many
Which
meters.
is totally okay.
Yeah, I forget how many meters they did. It wasn't like I think it was below 10,000. So it wasn't a massive program at Inel.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a respect 5,000. So it's which for a company with that market cap is a good program. And but just the fact that, and maybe the press release was a bit of an overcompensation in that regard. But it's just something to note that when people are out looking at all these companies, and it doesn't really speak to the quality of management or the company or the project. It's just when you're investing, just be cognizant that that downside can be. I think they traded 7 million shares today and dropped. I don't know where they closed. I'd have to check, but they were right around 27 cents when I checked. So it's just interesting to see that it's just the, sort of a cautionary tale for maybe new people getting into the business or looking at the business or who are unfamiliar with natural resource stocks, the fact that can happen in a day. So and not because they, like we've seen companies get their permits taken away, or it wasn't anything severe at all. Like because I saw the stock movement, I was like, holy smokes, are they like, what happened?
Did the glaciers come back or something?
Did the glaciers reform up there? You have to check in with all the Golden Triangle guys. So it's just something I wanted to see because some people might have noticed the volume because it was absolutely pretty crazy. Like because it popped up right on my screen and I was like, that's kind of weird because I noticed the press release and I was like, oh, that's pretty, par for the course, really. And then I was trying to figure out why it was such a reaction, and it's just a question also. I mean, they actually closed at 26.5, so they were down 13 cents today on almost 8 million share volume. So that's a lot of that's some stock, and so it's interesting just to see, and a lot of people. I mean, I've seen a lot of newsletter writers, analysts who actually really like the play, and you like Inel, like you really like.
I don't necessarily like Inel. I like Inel is cool because it does have a really large geochemical gold anomaly in soils, but it's not really soil. It's like talus scree, so it's going to bump up numbers naturally anyway.
Yeah.
So, but it's not just that. The land package is really attractive. What that company has is quite significant. I feel, especially up there. And that's probably what Brent really likes too. Like there is potential for that area to host a very large deposit when you look at the alteration footprint and you look at the occurrences there, et cetera, et cetera. The question is, what are they going to do with it, right?
Well, yeah, and the question is,
where are they going to direct their attention? How much attention are they going to give something? Yeah. Are they going to get scope creep? Right? And jumping from one prospect to another prospect. That's what happens when you have large land packages, right?
Yeah.
You try to please not just the market, but the shareholders, and you try to please everybody, and you can get lost in that. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what Colorado's next step will be.
Yeah.
And how they manage this.
And one of the things Lesley sort of has a bit of an issue with is land packages getting too large.
Too big, man.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. Like, if you want to have an area play, you have to have area players.
This morning, people might have caught SolidusGold, which is a Rick Van Nieuwenhuyse vehicle. People know Rick from Nova Gold and Nova Copper, and the Donlin deal. But they bought the Northumberland gold project from Newmont for $20 million this week. And they had a conference call this morning, so it was interesting to just hop on there. Mickey was on the call with me, so.
Was he?
Hey, Mickey. Yeah, so we were just on there just hearing about the property and their plans and stuff. So it's interesting. So, I mean, they're branding it as the start of a mid-tier gold producer. I mean, the one thing I will say about this is they are issuing a lot of stock right off the hop. I think they're doing like a $40 million private placement at like 30 cents. Or 35 cents, sorry. So that's 114 million share financing right out of the gate. So they need 20 million of that to pay for Northumberland from Newmont. And then the rest they'll be using to advance the project. So that's SolidusGold. It was the vehicle, I believe it used to be called Mantra Capital. So it's just the new vehicle that Rick Van Nieuwenhuyse and his team are using to quote unquote start a mid-tier gold producer. So it's interesting to see that. So we might dig into those a little bit more. Some of the startups. I'll have actually a full article on Solidus coming up, just because I've been following Nevada recently, and one of the interesting points they made on their conference call was how hard it is becoming to find quality projects in Nevada for juniors, because Newmont, Barrick, the majors control such huge land positions in Nevada now, right, that it's getting very difficult for juniors to find
area players.
Yeah, exactly. Find quality assets for themselves, right? So cool. Thank you again to our sponsor, the Yukon Mining Alliance, who I didn't mention off the hop. I briefly just wanted to point out my Victoria Gold site visit came out this week.
Yes.
So it is on the front page. So if you want to read up on my conversation with John McConnell, Mark Rantu, and the management at Victoria, you can check that out. They recently released the feasibility study. Looks quite good up there still. And now, as I always ask John, I'm like, where's the financing, John? So they recently did a couple $20+ million financing. So they need to raise the other just shy of $400 million. So it'll be interesting to watch. They've talked about streams. They've talked about, a $200 million debt capacity at the project. So I was laughing with our editor John, because I'm like, this is not an exclusive situation to Victoria, obviously, but we've had they've been kind enough to host us pretty much annually for a number of years, myself and other writers. But we were laughing because we were trying to come up with a headline for the Victoria Gold site visit, and I was like, man, we've used them all, I think. And so we were laughing because I'm like, gosh, what are we gonna say about it? And I'm like, well, maybe they're back. Like, I don't know. We didn't go with that, but I was like, but it's funny because a lot of projects that I've been here for almost 5 years, and so you've been through a cycle writing for the paper and everything, and it's funny because the companies that have been through the cycle as well, you get to see it's almost like coming around the bend. So it's funny just to see that if you look at my first Victoria article, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and the one now, just to see how my opinion of the project changed, it's pretty funny. So anyway, I wanted to mention that, and that's please do take a gander, goose and the gander, over at Yukon Mining Alliance. Check out their great stable of awesome companies. I also have I believe the Atac visit is coming up soon. They had another really cool intercept at their Orion target that I recommend everyone check out, because that looks like it might be emerging as something important at the Rackla project. But yeah, so let's wrap it up. I'd like to thank you again for joining us. This has been the Northern Miner Podcast. I'm Matthew Keeble with
Lesley Stokes,
and we'll talk to you next week.
Ciao.